Good morning. My name is Corless Smith. I'm your worship associate for today. And on behalf of Pastor Teresa Nino Soto, worship producer Vincent Rains, Dan Wright, Susan Keiter, and Jeff Milter, welcome to worship service with First Unitarian Church of Oakland. Please turn your camera off while we begin our service and light our chalice and candles. This will allow us to begin with a quiet space. We will turn our cameras on to greet each other, which we like to do, later in the service. Please note that we are recording this service. So if you don't want to be recorded, keep your camera off. For best viewing experience, we recommend that you make certain you have the up-to-date version of the Zoom app on your computer.
My name is Dan Wright. I'm a member of your Board of Trustees. We're glad you're here. We are an intentionally multi-generational, multiracial, multicultural, inclusive, and anti-oppressive religious community. You are welcome here. We invite you to fill out the guest connection card you'll see in the chat. We want to be able to support your exploration of what's available in our community that interests you and how you might participate. Now, before we begin our worship service, I get to give you a few reminders. Next Sunday after the service, everyone is invited to the first Sunday anti-racism gathering hosted by our Journey Toward Wholeness anti-racism team. We'll discuss dynamics of racial identity and practices to overcome barriers and oppression created by racism. On September 2nd, at 8 p.m., there is going to be a spirit circle, a small group exploration of an ethical life, including the worship and learning theme of the month. Pastor Teresa Ninan Soto will lead. Please join them to talk about these things and to support one another. To sign up, please send an email to connect@uuoakland.org. And finally, the Pacific Central District Women and Religion group is having their virtual fall retreat on Saturday, September 25th from 10 to 4 p.m. Are you interested in making new beginnings with new friends and old? We'll have learning sessions, affinity circles, and a keynote speech on the proposed 8th UU principle by Paula Cole-Jones. To register before the September 20th deadline, please see the article in the Chalice Chatter. All self-identified women are welcome. Please visit the online calendar for details about all of these happenings and more. For Zoom links to join church events, email yesplease@uuoakland.org. And now please welcome Ninan for our chalice lighting.
Good morning. Please take a smooth breath with me as we prepare to light our chalice. The chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism, meant to remind us that each day we have the opportunity to share our light. You'll see the words on your screen. Please stay muted and read along with me. We light this chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism. May it remind us of the divine spark in all creation, the power of love to heal what is broken, and to be grateful for life's blessings each day. And now the Black Lives Matter candle. Be present to what we say with this candle, that each and every Black life matters. And read along with me these words. We light this candle in recognition of the Black Lives Matter movement. We commit to dismantling with daily action the systemic racism that tries to deny the full humanity of Black people. And the peace candle. Today we light a peace candle And it is the way that we honor and grieve the deaths in Afghanistan, the fires raging across the country, gun violence, and those struck by COVID and violence against people of color. For all these things, we lift our hope for peace. We begin today with the song, Please Stay Muted and Sing Along at Home. The visual is a Paul Gauguin painting that inspired this hymn.
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. 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 Life is a riddle and a mystery. 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 Life is a riddle and a mystery. 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 Life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going?
Now we will unmute our microphones and greet our neighbors.
Hi, Sarah. Good morning.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning, Carol.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, Judith. Carol.
Morning.
Hi, Reverend Teresa.
Morning.
Hey, good morning, Mary.
Good to
How are
see
you?
everyone. Morning.
Hi.
Hi, Chalice. Hi, Debbie.
Debbie, how are you, Debbie?
Hey, Marcy.
Good
Hi.
morning,
Marcy.
Hey, George.
Mary, I
Hi,
see
Donna.
Bill's head bobbing in the
And hey,
background.
how are you?
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Mary.
Hello, Emily Iser. Haven't met you yet.
Hi there.
Hi, Tamara.
Hey, Debbie.
Hey.
Hi,
Hi,
Ron.
Jay.
Hi,
Hi, Mary.
Evelyn.
Hi,
Hey,
Mary
Judith.
Jane.
Hi, MJ.
everybody.
Hi,
Hey,
MJ.
Darcy.
Debbie.
Good
Hey,
morning,
Ron.
Ron.
Hi, Evelyn.
Hi,
Hi, Judith.
Susan.
Hi,
Hi,
Sally.
Sally.
Hi there.
Hi,
there.
Hi, Corless.
Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Hey,
Hi,
MJ.
Hi there.
Hi, Ron. Hey, MJ.
Okay,
Hi, Evelyn.
Susan K.
let's
Hello.
mute our microphones
Hey, Jane.
again.
Oh.
Thank you. We'll have more time to talk together later in the coffee hour. Now I want to read today's wisdom story. It's one you might know. It's called Brer Rabbit and the Tar Baby. It was originally published by Joel Chandler Harris in the late 19th century. The version I'm reading has been rewritten by Xavier. One day, after Brer Rabbit had fooled him with the calamus root, Brer Fox went to work and got some tar. He mixed it with some turpentine and fixed up a contraption that he called Tar Baby. He put a straw hat on the Tar Baby and sat her in the middle of the road, then hid in the bushes to see what would happen. He didn't have to wait long because Brer Rabbit, oh, by the way, Brer is a dialect term for brother. Brer Rabbit soon came pacing down the road, lippity, clippity, clippity, lippity, as saucy as a jaybird. Brer Fox, he lay low. Brer Rabbit came prancing along until he spotted the Tar Baby. Then he fetched up on his hind legs as if he was astonished. The Tar Baby, she sat there and Brer Fox laid low. "Good morning," said Brer Rabbit. "Nice weather we're having." The tar baby said nothing. Brer Fox laid low and grinned an evil grin. Brer Rabbit tried again. "And how are you feeling this fine day?" Brer Fox winked his eyes slowly and laid low in the bushes. And the tar baby, well, she said nothing. When Brer Fox found Brer Rabbit entangled with the tar baby, he felt really good and he rolled on the ground laughing. Eventually he got up and said, "Well, I think I got you this time, Brer Rabbit. Maybe I haven't, but I think I have. You've been running around here being cheeky for a mighty long time, but I think you've come to the end of the line. You've been cutting capers and bouncing about the neighborhood where I'm in charge and poking about in what is not your business." And Brer Fox, "Who asked you to clean up the tar baby and who stuck you up the way you are? Nobody in the round world. You just jammed yourself on that tar baby without waiting for any invitation," said Brer Fox. "And there you are, and there you'll stay until I fix up a heap of brushwood and make a fire. 'Cause I'm going to barbecue you today for sure," said Brer Fox. So Brer Rabbit talked in a mighty humble way. "I don't care what you do with me, Brer Fox," said Brer Rabbit. "Just don't fling me in that briar patch over there. Roast me, Brer Fox, but don't fling me in that briar patch," said Brer Rabbit. "It's so much trouble to start a fire," said Brer Fox, "that I think I'd rather hang you." "Hang me just as high as you please, Brer Fox," said Brer Rabbit, "but for Lord's sake, don't fling me in that briar patch." "I don't have any strings," said Brer Fox, "so I think I'd rather drown you." "Drown me just as deep as you please, Brer Fox," said Brer Rabbit, "but for Lord's sake, don't fling me in that briar patch." "There's no water nearby," said Brer Fox, "so I think I'd rather skin you." "Skin me, Brer Fox, snatch out my eyeballs, tear out my ears by the roots and cut off my legs," said Brer Rabbit. "Only please, Brer Fox, please don't throw me in that briar patch." "It's not going to be much fun skinning you," said Brer Fox. "You're not scared of that, but you are scared of the briar patch." And with that, Brer Fox yanked Brer Rabbit off the tar baby and yanked him off the tar baby and flung him kerplunk right into the briar patch. Well, there was a flutter where Brer Rabbit landed. Then, "Ooh, ow, ouch," he screeched and he squalled. Then, after a while, there was only a weak whisper from Brer Rabbit. Brer Fox listened. "I got him. Brer Rabbit is dead," said Brer Fox. But then he heard a scuffling away at the other end of the briar patch. And lo and behold, who does Brer Fox see scrambling out but Brer Rabbit himself, playing a briar bush whistle. "Born and bred in the briar patch, that's me," laughed Brer Rabbit. "I told you not to throw me there. In all the world, that's the place I love best." With a lippity-clip, he hopped away. The end. Today, I reflect on this story. Sometimes it's interpreted as an example of how continually struggling against something only gets you in deeper. The more that Brer Rabbit demands the tar baby respond to him, the more stuck he gets to the tar baby. As someone who sews a lot, I know this is true from untangling knots of thread or yarn. You have to do it very gently, not pulling and tugging if you want to get anywhere and not just make worse knots. However, if your experience was like mine, you know the Uncle Remus stories from which Brer Rabbit is drawn. through the Walt Disney film, The Song of the South, that portrayed the era of slavery as a peaceful, happy place where people sang, zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, my, oh my, what a wonderful day. This is, of course, total hogwash. So what am I to think of this Aesop's fable-like story that, like all the Uncle Remus stories, features the wily Brer Rabbit as he outwits his enemies, Brer Fox and Brer Bear? Were these tales racist? Was it a case of stealing folklore and profiting from it, as Alice Walker wrote in a 1980 essay? Reverend Teresa turned me on to an article in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by Cheryl James, a Black woman. She argues that the answer to these questions lies in Joel Chandler Harris's early life. He was an illegitimate child born in poverty who apprenticed as a typesetter, worked in the plantation fields, and hung out with enslaved people in their cabins listening to their stories. Owen Terrell, enslaved for his whole life, was the model for Uncle Remus, the narrator of the tales he tells to the plantation owner's son. In an article in the African American Review, Robert Cochran says that Uncle Remus tells the boy what white Southern parents wouldn't want him to hear. Uncle Remus, he says, quote, contrasts his own wisdom with the biological father's stupidity. It's important, the smallest, weakest character, Brer Rabbit, always outwits the others, not with violence, but with his wits. Harris himself wrote in 1880 that, quote, it needs no scientific investigation to show the slave selects as his hero the weakest and most harmless of all animals and brings him out victorious in the contest with the bear, the wolf, and the fox. It's not virtue that triumphs, but hopelessness, or rather helplessness. There's a big difference. It's not malice, but mischievousness. Later in his life, in 1905, Harris founded the Uncle Remus Home magazine. He said its mission was, quote, the obliteration of prejudice against the Blacks, the demand for a square deal, and the uplifting of both races so they can look justice in the face without blushing. In his newspaper career, Harris supported education for former enslaved people, suffrage, and equality. He cited W.E.B. Du Bois in his work, and Booker T. Washington praised him. According to Julius Lester, a prize-winning author of African-American children's books, Harris preserved important Black folklore. And Harris never said he wrote the stories. In fact, and here's a really amazing thing. In fact, the Tar Baby story derives from an African tale in which Anansi the spider creates a wooden doll and covers it with gum and puts some yams in its lap to capture the fairy Moesha. She ate the yams, but got angry when the doll didn't respond, hit it, and she gets stuck. And there are Central and South American versions of this story. In one Spanish language version from the mountains of Colombia, a rabbit is trapped by the Muñeca de Brea, tar doll. There's even a Buddhist myth about Prince Five Weapons, the future Buddha, who meets the ogre Sticky Hair. Some scholars argue that the original for all these stories came from India. Since this story is found in so many cultures, we might call it an archetype, described by Carl Jung as a recurrent symbol or motif in literature, art, or mythology. It's really too bad that the term tar baby conjures a racial slur for many people, since it isn't one in these worldwide stories. The Uncle Remus stories are a reflection of African-American folklore as it was imported to the United States, and they are full of wisdom and tell of the ways the apparently powerless survive and thrive. For example, in my own case, just as Brer Rabbit gets stuck because he reacts impulsively and violently to the tar baby without really seeing it for what it is. I also often react in just this way to things, jumping to conclusions that end up in tangles and knots. Unfortunately, I'm not as clever as Brer Rabbit. I can't get out of these so easily. I get into unfortunate mental or physical briar patches that kind of unthinking negative reactions lead to. The Uncle Remus stories are an important part of American history. They show an elder teaching a youngster about how to survive in the world. They didn't get to us in the optimal way, but I'm glad we've got them. I hope we don't prevent children from hearing them. They're a valuable part of all of our heritage.
And if you take just a few smooth breaths, I'd like for us to consider everything that we've just mentioned, what people are holding, and we'll pray together for a few moments. For the people of the congregation, we've heard several names shared, thinking of Bev, thinking of the person Hester mentioned who lost her boyfriend. We think of those who suffer and those in trouble, people ill with COVID, people fighting COVID, and people separated by COVID. We think of the concerns of Oakland, children in school, jobs, housing. We think of the world hurting in so many places. Afghanistan, Louisiana, many others. We think of the world's peoples separated from each other. And we think of leaders who must be accountable for the way they live and move in communities. We think of this congregation, the people in its history, the people in its future. For them, we have care. For them, we have courage. And for them, we offer hope. We hold the mission of this congregation as a light that leads us forward. And for all these things, we give thanks and say, Amen. In just a moment, you'll hear the pop-up choir share with us. Forget your perfect offering. Today, as we move toward the beautiful, the terrible, and everything else, imagine what offering you would receive and what offering you would give to those around you in the world.
Forget your perfect offering. Forget your perfect offering. Ring the bells that you can ring. Ring the bells that you can ring. There is a crack in everything. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light
What a wonderful song. Thank you, everyone who participated in making that and sharing it again. We're really blessed. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the possibilities before us. One of the things that's complicated is that we often have multiple experiences and multiple feelings at any given moment. And when it's a pandemic and we have so much uncertainty in our experience, the same is true of this. Assata Shakur, the Black Panther and liberationist, urges the following. We need a revolution of the mind. We need a revolution of the heart. We need a revolution of the spirit. The power of the people is stronger than any weapon. A people's revolution can't be stopped. We need to be weapons of mass construction, weapons of mass love. It is not enough just to change the system. We need to change ourselves. We have got to make this world user-friendly. User-friendly. It is an essential element that reflects the human and planetary experience when we consider a framework of evolution. In 1900, at Universalist Church of the Redeemer in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the minister, the Reverend Dr. Marion Shutter, engaged with this question in an intense public way. Reverend Shutter gave 12 lectures that explained the specific connections between Darwin's theories and Unitarian Universalism. At least 1,000 people attended each lecture. Reverend Shutter said that the long battle between science and religion was to a certain extent, upon both sides, a mistake. Not only is there no real conflict when we come to understand the subject, but religion or religious thought has been the actual gainer. Religion has lost nothing but some unscientific notions that were long but erroneously supposed to belong to it. It is better without them. It stands on solider footing. It can make stronger appeal to the human intellect. In that way, dealing with our perceptions directly, confronting our biases without dragging shame along, allows us to evolve. We evolve who we are being in the world and who we will yet become. So yes, personal communal evolution is something we understand, but what else is there? How does this kind of evolution relate more specifically to origins theories? If there doesn't have to be any actual battle between religion and science, what's next? One of the things for us to contemplate is the interdependent nature of evolution. Darwin described it this way. In the long history of humankind and animal kind too, those who learned to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. Have you heard that before? I know you've probably heard about survival of the fittest, of natural selection. But what about an evolutionary imperative to adapt and improvise? Further, to what are we adapting? What is the point of improvising? As in, why are we doing it? The part of the story of evolution that we choose to tell affects how we experience growing, changing, and adapting in community. If you think evolution tells you that you have to fight tooth and nail for your survival, you will. If you understand that something else is possible, you may embrace that as well. Emphasizing competition and survival is, in fact, a narrow view of what evolution is meant to teach us. In nature, and are we not part of nature? Groups of cooperative individuals are more successful than groups of selfish individuals, which is why choosing to be part of this community and sharing with it your enthusiasm, your dedication, and your energy and resources makes all the difference. Yes. Václav Havel urges us to rely on our interconnectedness with these words. We must divest ourselves of our egocentric anthropomorphism, our habit of seeing ourselves as masters of the universe who can do whatever occurs to us. We must discover a new respect for what transcends us, for the universe, for the earth, for nature, for life, and for reality. Our respect for other people, for other nations, and for other cultures can only grow from a humble respect for the cosmic order and from an awareness that we are part of it, that we share in it, and that nothing of what we do is lost, but rather becomes part of the eternal memory of being. Right there, Havel gives us another encouragement to individual and communal evolution. Did you catch it? Our respect for other people, for other nations, and for other cultures can only grow from a humble respect for the cosmic order. What does it mean for Unitarian Universalists to practice humility? With regard to the cosmic order, our ongoing improvement and our place in the universe? Well, the biologist, John Pepper, offers that the non-cooperator tries to get the biggest piece of pie, but the cooperator helps the pie be bigger. Immediately, we know this means something like when the pieces of pie go around, you don't just grab your fork and your napkin and dig in. Rather, humility includes the impulse to wonder if the people around you, including the people you love, like, and work alongside, and maybe a few people who, you have to work on your patience with, all of those people are getting their piece of pie. Okay, Reverend Teresa. But what even does pie represent in this case? Remember that patterns repeat and repeat. Pie represents nourishment, joy, sustenance, sharing, connecting. In order to be accountable to our actual place in the planet, we must make that assessment right-sized. Humans are only the peak result of evolution if they describe it that way. It turns out that on a small scale and on the largest we can imagine, everything is connected and interdependent. You may have heard me talk about how you and the things you do don't have to be perfect to be awesome. Do you remember that? You don't have to be perfect to be awesome. Today, we're going to roll out part 2. You aren't actually going to end up perfect, and that's okay. Part 1 says that you don't have to, as though if you try hard enough, you might hit perfection sometimes. One reason to address this directly is that you are enough. What you do is enough. What you dream is enough. It's important for us to be clear that the evolution of communities and individuals doesn't happen because you pull on your bootstraps and try harder. We don't have to try harder, but instead keep truing up the values, keep truing up our house of integrity and the connections to our values. The process won't be perfect, and that's okay. I can tell you that, right, with my mouth, and you can know it in your mind, that you are constructed to be connected. But there is a similar, large, concurrent truth. You are constructed to care for one another. The way we care is shaped by filters that sometimes leave unexamined. Henry James Garrett writes for the New York Times that scientists at the University of Chicago did some experiments with rats to try to answer some questions about how empathy shapes morality. You may have heard this before, but it's important to mention today because one of the active conversations in conservative religious community is that empathy is a sin. Now, as a Unitarian Universalist, my definition of sin is not very broad, right? Breaking your promises to yourself or others, things like that. And empathy, not in that bucket at all whatsoever. Scientists discovered that a black rat would normally rescue black rats, and white rats would normally rescue white rats. They also found that a white rat raised with black rats would rescue black rats, but wouldn't rescue white rats. A black rat raised with white rats would rescue both white rats, but not black ones. Rats raised with both would rescue both. How does the pattern of an in crowd and an out crowd repeat and repeat in our lives? It goes beyond the surface appearance of people around us. Garrett's description of the experiment specified that the researchers found that it is not the rat's color that determines which type of rat it will show empathy for, but the social context in which it was raised, the community. In an experiment where one rat was in an unpleasantly restrictive cage and one was free, the free rat, occasionally hearing distress calls from its compatriot, learned to open the cage. We need to learn to open the cages. And they did so with great efficiency over time. It would release the other animal even if there wasn't a payoff of a reunion with it. Astonishingly, if given access to a small hoard of chocolate chips, the free rat would usually save at least one treat for the captive, which is a lot to expect from a rat. There are lots of ways to describe the attitudes that allow us to practice growing together and interconnectedness. This biological development is one of them. Pema Chodron says that this kinship with the suffering of others, this inability to continue to regard it from afar, is the discovery of our soft spot. How is your soft spot doing? Are you tired of regarding? Rest. Rest in community. Be held in care. She says it's the discovery of Bodhichitta. Bodhichitta is a Sanskrit word that means noble or awakened heart. That's your soft spot. It is said to be present in all beings, yes, even when you're not feeling it. Just as butter is inherent in milk and oil is inherent in a sesame seed, the soft spot is inherent in you and me. People will tell you that self-reliance is a mark of strength. When they do that, they have missed the complexity of what it means to remain humble, to stay interconnected, and to grow in a pattern of health and mutual strengthening. They ignore the soft spot of kinship inside each of us. It turns out that rats do not show empathy because of an innate recognition of similar physical appearance. Likewise, when human empathy can be partial, it is because the experiences of people from some groups and some lived experiences are hidden from our view, which limits our empathy toward them. This empathy, this practicing and growing together, is one of the reasons that careful consideration of what role the narrative of evolution plays in our lives matters. We are not finished evolving into the best mature representation of ourselves as individuals and communities. We evolve together by noticing and naming the barriers to our interconnectedness. According to Garrett, it's vital to recognize that prejudice is not baked in. It is the result of ignorance. A failure to learn about people or rats of different kinds can mean that we fail to recognize their pain as genuine pain. Empathy can be switched off. Empathy can be conveniently labeled as sin. But now we've considered some of the costs. We can commit to growing together and evolving to who we are meant to be in the world. Audre Lorde reminds us this way. And our dream of our coming together, encircled, driven, not only by love, but by lust for a working tomorrow. The flights of this journey, mapless, uncertain, and necessary as water. May it be so. Let us see to it. Now, Corless will lead us in our invitation of generosity. Thank you, Corless.
Thank you, Reverend Teresa. That was so wise. Thank you. Thank you. Besides missing all of you, I really miss our building, our beautiful building. It's always seemed to me like a giant upside down ship in which we're all journeying together, helping each other, learning about each other, being part of the community. A community of people dedicated to the principles of Unitarian Universalism, chief among them for me, the dignity and worth of every human being, the interconnectedness of life, acknowledgement of all beings and the earth and justice. It's been a blessing to participate in this community virtually through Zoom, as we're doing today. But the fact that we're not together in person in our lovely building doesn't mean that we aren't faced with the expenses of sustaining the building, maintaining and building those who staff it. So I'm asking, will you please join in sustaining our community with an offering according to your means and your hope that we will soon again be together, inhabiting our building and the community it shelters. Be as generous as you can be. You will see how to do that in the chat. And will you please join me in repeating our commitment to the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love we call community. We dedicate ourselves and these our offerings. Got a little closing song. Give a Little Love, sung by the virtual crescendo choir.
We've got to give a little love, have a little hope, make this world a little better. Try a little more, harder than before, just do it, we can do it together. Oh, we can really make it better. Oh, la la la, only if we try. Oh, we can really make it better. Oh, la la la, only if we try. Living in this crazy world, so caught up in the confusion, nothing is making sense for me and you. Maybe we can find a way, there's got to be solution, how to make a brighter day. What do? We've got to give a little love, have a little hope, make this world a little better. Try a little more, harder than before, just do it, we can do it together. Oh, we can really make it better. Oh, la la la, only if we try. Oh, we can really make it better. Oh, la la la, only if we try. Only if we try. Only if we try.
What a beautiful reminder. I'm grateful for that. In just a moment, I'll go ahead and close with our benediction. I'd love for you to feel your seat underneath you, relax your shoulders. Imagine that this week you'll see some opportunities for empathy. You'll see some opportunities for care. And thus we begin our week with these words. Keep my anger from becoming meanness. Keep my sorrow from collapsing into self-pity. Keep my heart soft enough to keep from breaking. Keep my anger turned towards justice and not cruelty. Remind me that all of this, every bit of it, is for love. Keep me fiercely kind. So may it be. May we be the ones.